Hi, boys and girls. I told you that I was going to read you chapter 3 and 4 in our last video of Because of Winn Dixie. But because we talked so much, I could only get through chapter 3. So today I'm going to read you chapter 4, okay? Now, we're going to think back and we're going to remember what we know. We know now that Opal is how old? We learned that in our last chapter. She's 10 years old, yes. We know she has a daddy. And we know she has a mama, but where is her mama? She doesn't know. Her mama left when she was 3, and she doesn't remember her. Because when you're 3 years old, you don't remember what happens when you're 3 years old, when you get older. Your brain just doesn't remember that kind of stuff when you're 3. So she doesn't know anything about her because her daddy has not told her much about her mama at all. Can you imagine being 10 years old and not knowing anything about your mama and being, missing her because she's not with you? So Opal said to Winn Dixie that she kind of feels like she's an orphan. Do you remember the word orphan? And an orphan is a child who does not have a mama and a daddy. Their mama and their daddy are dead. So even though Opal's mama and daddy are not dead, that's how she feels sometimes. Because her daddy's always working and he doesn't talk to Opal very much. Why do you think her daddy always keeps his head down? Do you have any idea? It kind of said in chapter 3 what people were thinking, right? That daddy wishes that her mama would come back. So maybe he's lonely too. Maybe he's sad that her mama's gone and he misses her. So Opal is feeling lonely, I think. And now she says to Winn Dixie, maybe I should ask Daddy to tell me about my mama. So she tells her dad, now that I'm 10, will you please tell me 10 things about my mama? 1 for every year that I am. So in chapter 4, we're going to learn a few things about her mama, okay? So let's read chapter 4 to find out something about Opal's mama. 1, said the preacher. We were sitting on the couch and Winn Dixie was sitting between us. Winn Dixie had already decided that he liked the couch a lot. 1, said the preacher again. Winn Dixie looked at him kind of hard. Your mama was funny. She could make just about anybody laugh. 2, he said. She had red hair and freckles. Just like me, I said. Freckles are little dots that are sometimes on people's faces, especially people who have red hair. They have little dots sometimes on their faces. Yeah. 3, she liked to plant things. She had a talent for it. She could stick a tire in the ground and grow a car. Do you think she could really do that? No, he's being silly. But what he means is she really was good at growing things. Winn Dixie started chewing on his paw, and I tapped him on the head to make him stop. 4, said the preacher. She could run fast. If you were racing her, you couldn't ever let her get a head start because she would beat you for sure. I'm that way too, I said. Back home in Watley, I raced Liam Fullerton and beat him. And he said it wasn't fair because boys and girls shouldn't race each other to begin with. I told him he was just a sore loser. The preacher nodded. He was quiet for a minute. I'm ready for number 5, I told him. 5, he said. She couldn't cook. She burned everything, including water. She had a hard time opening a can of beans. She couldn't make head or tail of a piece of meat. That's a phrase that means, if you say she couldn't make head or tail of something, that means she really couldn't even figure it out. So he says she couldn't figure out a piece of meat. I think he means she's a really bad cook. 6. The preacher rubbed his nose and looked up at the ceiling. Winn Dixie looked up too. Number 6 is that your mama loved a story. She would sit and listen to stories all day long. She loved to be told a story. She especially liked funny ones, stories that made her laugh. The preacher nodded his head like he was agreeing with himself. What's number 7? I asked. Let's see, he said. She knew all the constellations, every planet in the nighttime sky. So the constellations are groups of stars that are up in the sky, that are they're in groups, and people have drawn pictures of them together so that they form something. Like one of them is called Orion, and it's in the form of I think it's a man. And then the stars are part of his belt. Okay, it's called Orion's belt. So those are constellations, groups of stars. And so he said she knew all the stars, all the constellations in the sky. And she knew the planets. She could find them up in the sky. Well, you can't see all the planets, but some of them. And every last one of them she could name. And she could point them out. She never got tired of looking at them. Number 8, said the preacher, with his eyes closed, was that she hated being a preacher's wife. She said she just couldn't stand having the ladies at church judge what she was wearing and what she was cooking and how she was singing. She said it made her feel like a bug under a microscope. So what he's saying here is kind of painful, isn't it? That Opal's mama hated being his wife because he's a preacher. That doesn't mean she hated him, but she hated being his wife because she had to be a part of the church, and she didn't like the way the people in the church treated her. She felt like she was having to be looked at so carefully, and she felt like she was being judged, like people were deciding whether she was good or bad all the time, and that was really hard for her. Winn Dixie lay down on the couch. He put his nose in the preacher's lap and his tail in mine. 10, said the preacher. 9, I told him. Oh, 9, said the preacher. She drank. She drank beer and whiskey and wine. Sometimes she couldn't stop drinking. And that made me and your mama fight quite a bit. So what he's talking about here is that she drank alcohol or liquor. And when adults drink alcohol or liquor, if they drink too much, sometimes it makes them not very nice. And it makes their behavior not very good. And so that's something that she did. Number 10, he said with a long sigh. Number 10 is that your mama loved you. She loved you very, very much. But she left me, I told him. She left us, said the preacher softly. I could see him pulling his old turtle head back into his stupid turtle shell. She packed her bags and left us, and she didn't leave one thing behind. Okay, I said. I got up off the couch. Winn Dixie hopped off too. Thank you for telling me, I said. I went right back into my room and wrote down all 10 things that the preacher had told me. I I wrote them down just the way he said them to me so that I wouldn't forget them. And then I read them out loud to Winn Dixie until I had them memorized. I wanted to know those 10 things inside and out. That way, if my mama ever came back, I would recognize her. That means I would know who she was. And I would be able to grab her and hold on to her tight and not let her get away from me ever again.